UKnightedXP. We play for the world.
Something offline you want to be recording, you can talk to us offline too. So that's really fun. So welcome. Thank you for coming out. I kind of like small audiences, so this is good for me. Real quick introduction, our team, UKnightedXP, we're a 501c3 charity. Our mission is to advance the world through gaming, education, and charity. And it's fun to be here at PENSACON. This is about a fourth of us are actually local to the 850 area. So we have a passion for this area and to pay it forward. That's what brings us here physically. A couple of us here, we got 4 more volunteers back at the Museum of Commerce right now too. But we basically leverage gaming and gaming culture for positive social impact worldwide. And it's interesting, you know, just 5 years ago, we were not really having too many conversations about artificial intelligence. We were having some deep learning models and machine learning have been conversations for over a decade, but now that it's become mainstream, it's a hot topic right now. So the real world significance of the rapid acceleration of technological advancement is kind of what brings us today in today's panel. So we're going to unveil to you guys a little bit about our global strategy, open discussion around the current state of the metaverse, the significance of artificial intelligence in education, and how gaming and gaming culture also serve as catalysts to what we call the age of automation. So we're going to introduce our panel. We'll start with some questions for them, and I'll be your moderator today as the CEO of UKnightedXP. And we're going to open the floor to Q&A for the last 20 minutes, give you guys a chance to talk and interact with the panel, which will be really good with this size audience. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you guys here. And panelists, please keep your responses to 2 minutes or less, which is a fun speed challenge for you. These guys all have a lot to say. When I give you their quick intros or pre-canned for the sake of time, you'll understand. So first up, Sibila Spalding. Wave, Sibila. We're pleased to welcome Sibila Spalding, a technology consultant employed by Microsoft, to our panel today. Sibila brings years of relevant industry experience to the table, and she'll be sharing her own personal views and opinions on AI and education, and she is not officially representing Microsoft's vision on the topics today. Marcus Esports Howard, top left. Marcus is a lifelong gamer, serial entrepreneur, college professor, and an international startup advisor. In 2020, the Game Awards selected Marcus as one of 50 professionals for Future Class, a worldwide cohort of leaders building a more inclusive future for the gaming industry. In 2021, LinkedIn selected him as one of its ecosystem's top 20 voices for sports. Alex Sellers, present. Alex is the director of cybersecurity for UKnightedXP. He has an actual task force that we've assigned to him, which is really fun. A nerd charity has its own cyber task force, as well as senior security engineer with hands-on experience in the gaming industry and cutting-edge tech. His personal experience in security spans over 15 years, from hacking video games to securing companies from cyber threats. So he'll be able to speak to that specifically when it comes to AI in our operational environment. Dr. Leslie Bender Jutzi on the left. Hey, Leslie. Dr. Leslie Bender Jutzi is an award-winning K-12 educator and current college administrator. Her life's work is focused upon supporting students from rural and underserved communities and students with designated disabilities. She was an early adopter of gaming and innovation as an instructional methodology and developed the first K-12 esports program in the United States and one of the first secondary gaming schools in the US. And then you have myself. I'm not going to bore you too much. My dad, retired Army officer, Air and Missile Defense, had a small farm here in Baker, Florida, and the executive director of UKnightedXP. And right out the gate, let's get started with our terms and definitions, which I think is really important for technical conversations and panels like this. So Sibila, my favorite question to ask you, 2 minutes or less, what the heck is AI? And could you tell us about how it began?
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that question, but AI is basically nowadays a wing of engineering, of software engineering and data science that allows to augment processes through human type of intelligence and behavior that is through automation and and augmentation of data and insights. It's usually a combination of different types of technologies that come to play together that are known as various type of data science wings, such as natural language processing, deep learning, and other various concepts that could go way too technical. But in the end, is essentially nothing more than just a software application systems that use data and use behaviors that are being trained to use that data or insights to generate or do something or to create some kind of services or some kind of technology augmentations that help be more productive or be more secure or learn better or essentially reach out potentials that normally not unlocked by potential by the human brain and um, the humankind. Without in teams or as individuals, we do have constraints that based on how fast we think or how fast we learn or how fast we find information. And what AI in the end is allowing us to reach our potentials that are hidden to us because of our own limitations, to be able to be better and to adapt faster and to thrive better and to learn faster by unlocking things that normally are hidden to us. And in this day and age, I would like to say it's also um, one way to bring cultures and to bring different people who normally would have been separated by either geography or by language or by culture or by belief systems and bring out the opinions to the table. And it doesn't matter who it is, it gives a equilibrium, it gives voice, it gives power to everybody who uses to decide what they want to take away from the insights that are given to them. And I wouldn't say it's something that is independent and autonomous or other different peers that might be there around global intelligence. It's more or less, it's a tool for us to utilize data better and to utilize technology better to be better. One of the things that
Outstanding. All right, so second question, Sibila, before we move forward here. So what exactly is the difference between general and artificial intelligence?
I would like to give an example from our society and what we know to be. In the same way, one person can be very smart, intelligent. When they are born, they possess certain capabilities, and as they grow, they learn from the society and from history and from textbooks, etc. And they augment their own natural given intelligence with that of the general societal and intelligence that has been collected through history and space and time. And the AI and general intelligence is very much the same. The AI are very narrow focused applications or skill sets of artificial intelligence, and that are based on specific data set or that is specific snapshot or the AI is being trained on. However, general intelligence would be something that is more complete, more global. It involves other insights and that is able to learn and to actually reason and to create um, and to be independent, to be autonomous. And that's something that is far away, and it's not probably even possible because of certain limitations that make humans different from machines. Machines need purpose and they need creativity that they don't have, and that's what we bring to the table. We bring the creativity, we bring the visions, we bring the originality. A machine language or just a machine or any kind of system that is based on computation and algorithmic systems is only going to be able to do something that is being asked to do. And even if we do plan, like in gaming, some kind of behaviors and some kind of scripts, at the end, we are ultimately the person, the people who put that script in there. And with humans, that's not the same. And we are essentially what makes AI or what makes AGI even possible. So I don't know if you are to believe that humans as religion or culture or science is something that is alive through time, then we can assume that something like that could be possible as well for machine. But in that case, there are certain types of consequences that we need to answer, and certain types of ethics and systems that need to be put in place, because if 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 a machine can or language or system can exist and thrive and do certain things, then it will need to have certain breaks and certain policies, the same way we have for humans.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Leslie, would you mind telling us a little bit about the importance and the role of digital citizenship in education, and especially in regards to what Sibila just laid out for us a little bit?
Well, thank you so much, Mitch, for asking me that question. And Sibila has highlighted the conundrum that faces us in regards to artificial intelligence. And digital citizenship is a way to put controls on some of the potential negative impacts of AI. We want to operate from a common source of ethics and a common understanding of what's beneficial to society in regards to the use of AI, for example, in education. So we really focus on teaching students acceptable use, teaching them to avoid negative behaviors like bullying, doxing, things like that. And if we can instill that sense of ethics and responsibility into these generations of students who are witnessing the dawn of the age of automation, then we have a bright future. I like to think of it as a Jetsons future. But we want to avoid some of the negative consequences that we've seen, right? So we don't want Mr. Robot's dystopian future, right? So I think what Sibila said was right on the money. I think that the key is that digital citizenship, Mitch, that you talk about. And I think that if we as educators, as parents, as employers can be acceptable in instilling that sense of responsibility and ethics in our community, then we will be successful in seeing all of the benefits of what AI has to offer.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie. So Marcus, let's carry on where she just left off there and tell us a little bit about how your operational and business environment has changed and the pipeline for learning as a consultant and a business professional in the gaming space.
Another excellent question. I think it's rapidly evolving. I think we see, most breakout technologies find their place first in the gaming industry, I think, before they go mass market, just because of the breakneck speed of trying to maximize immersion interactivity. And so I think right now we're seeing really kind of, if I'm honest, terror in the space from game developers. If you think about, Sibila made a great point that you can't have the kind of creativity and the ability to concept the way that humans can. But what's happening now is that AI is getting 80% there. And I think in a business environment, 80% is good enough. And so if you have a system running 80% efficacy, 80% efficiency, then instead of hiring 5 people to build a game, you can hire 1 person to fix the 20% of code that's missing. So there is a lot of concern in the space. But I think it's a balancing act, because while we have to be careful about automating our jobs, we also have to recognize that some automation is great because it reduces and removes the tedious tasks, the low value tasks, so that we can then have the flexibility, the bandwidth to do the things that only humans can do. So I see it. I'm trying to find opportunities to leverage it to gain more time for myself. Right. I've been writing code for 15 years. If I wanted to stand up a website, it would be awesome just to to not have to spend 10 hours doing something I can do in an hour if I had AI assist. But I have to recognize, again, the ethics of doing that at scale, because businesses, most, especially here in America, businesses care more about profit margins and profit than they do about people. And we've already seen that happen in BuzzFeed, right? Not a gaming company, but they laid off, I want to say, 1,200 people because they were going to replace that content with AI, and then their stock price, their share price quadrupled. So adding that into the gaming space, I think, again, it's just a balancing act of understanding that it has the potential to create more productivity, more value, but balancing that with the ethics of operating with integrity with peers and with employees, so that you keep people gainfully employed.
Thank you, Marcus. And so just want to add a little bit to this for the audience too. So in UKnightedXP, when we consult or we work with a client, we consider the VUCA factor. For those that don't know the acronym VUCA, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And so when you consider the VUCA factor as it pertains to artificial intelligence and how quickly it accelerates our potential and our capabilities and our research abilities, it increases the VUCA factor tenfold, which brings me to our poor cyber director, Alex, and a question for you. Thinking about everything that's been prepped here by our panel for you, your job is going to rapidly change every day to try and keep us safe in a cyber environment. Tell us a little bit about that evolving cyber environment and how we're going to keep ahead of this.
So I wouldn't say is going to, as much as I would say is already involved. One of the benefits of being in this industry is what I've seen happen over the past even 3 years is that cybersecurity in the back end of what you guys don't see has been directly protecting a lot of personal information from companies locking down their personal, the PII, or personally identifiable information. Those, could be your name, your address, your phone number, everything like that. Their goal at this time has been to shore up their defenses as hackers start using AI negatively. And I'm not going to spin the AI as good or bad. It's both, it's a two-way street for sure. Hackers can, as Marcus said, bring in and start developing better malicious code. We, on the cybersecurity side, use a lot of tools and actually develop, as I've done before, tooling to ensure that our backend services are up to snuff. It's a lot of cat and mouse, as I always say. One of the things I say in my interviews is, as I go on further and further, there's going to be better 15-year-old, 14-year-old kids that are in Russia or China, Italy, Israel especially. My mentor actually was Israeli, and it's amazing what they can do because they surround themselves with such fantastic tooling, and they grow themselves around it. And that's where the education comes in, of bringing it in and tying it in and saying, all right, how do we get this in the kids' hands sooner? I, being a wonderful millennial, I'll use that wonderful term, I grew up around playing video games, and that's what got me into hacking video games. And that was, a lack of a better term, dumb hacking. So I go in, edit memory manually, do this, do that. Now people can do it with tooling. We had developed at a game company that I was at a method to test all of the games before they went out, and I never had to touch it. That was all done through AI, through a process of investigation that we had, tested and how we, built it out. So we made sure that all of the games and services that we released to the public have been properly tested through methods that a normal person would use based off of AI generation of data collection on how people play the games prior. So that's one good example out of quite a few. So the best way you can do it personally is locking down your information, making sure you're only sharing what you have, or what you want to let out and be known. I use several aliases online, but you do you. Use password managers, because if you use one password across everywhere, there's a wonderful website called Have I Been Pwned, PWND. I'm not going to share any specific tools except that, because that one can showcase, all right, here's my email address, here's my password that I've used, where has it been used before, has it been hacked, do people know about it? That guy's been sued so many times, and he still has that website up. It's amazing. But I can go into that story later. but use password managers and then use multi-factor authentication. It makes it harder for people to access your machine or any of your websites if you have a second step to go into it. So you type your username and password, it generates and pops up, all right, do you have your phone on you? Can you push the OK button to show that it's actually you? Those are many, many ways to help prevent you from being taken advantage of, especially with AI being used nowadays on the negative side, maliciously, to go through and hack and brute force passwords. That's a long-winded way to say yes and no. But yeah, here's ways you can save yourself, save your privacy.
Thank you, Alex. Dr. Leslie, how is AI currently being used in education and who's using it?
Well, you know, I really am intrigued by some of the things that Alex has said about just how they're using it to address tedious items. And Marcus mentioned that as well, and I think Sibila started us off that way. And so one of the things that we see happening is that some of those tedious tasks, whether it's applications or enrollment forms, things like that, those are being addressed using AI. But it's also got several other applications that help us. Sibila talked about the impact of universal learning and just the ability to leverage education for all and to provide an equal playing field. And I think if we look at the UNESCO Education 2030 plan, we see that their goal is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality in education and promoting lifelong learning and opportunities for all. And I think that AI has the promise of doing that. And we see it used by students right now to write papers and in tutoring. We all know about, for example, Duolingo, Thinkster, and some of those other programs. But teachers are also using it. They're using it to personalize learning. It's Coursera, for example, is using it to adjust immediately when they see that several people that are going through a course have answered a particular question incorrectly. They will now put hints up, for example, in a course to make sure that people know the way they should be moving through the course and how they should answer that particular program. So it's got application in colleges and K-12, and the beauty of it is the personalized learning aspect, the ability to use adaptive technologies through AI, and the ability to, in real time, change up a course to address a particular issue for a particular student and adjust that learning and that lesson plan are just fabulous. And we'll get to some of the dangers though later, so stay tuned.
So Dr. Lee, let's expand on that. Talk about ways that AI can be used to immediately impact students and their success in the K-12 environment.
Well, I like the fact that you used the word environment, Mitch, because we've seen, especially with COVID, that a lot of schools are taking movement out of the classroom. They're not getting, students are not getting an opportunity, for example, to hit the playground as much as they used to. Some students are not able to access music as much as they used to. And what we see is that students who move actually are more successful. They have higher test scores. They synthesize their learning better. So just the ability of AI, for example, to adjust the classroom with the heating and cooling, to make music, to be able to sense students' moods and adjust the lighting, for example. Those things can actually have an immediate impact on student learning. But in addition, course design. For example, if students can write essays, why can't we write courses, right? So if we're teachers, we get to design lesson plans and syllabus that are much more robust and much more exciting. And when we're relevant to students, Mitch, students are willing to take responsibility for learning, and they will push the envelope themselves because they're so excited about the topic and the way it's presented. So these are some immediate impacts: the ability to adjust those lesson plans, the ability to adjust that classroom, the adaptive learning, and of course the course design.
Marcus, I saw your hand go up first. Go ahead.
I'm glad to
There's space.
I'm glad that
Alex,
I'm glad this feature works. I wanted to share just a very specific example. I'm using a guest lecture over at the University of Kentucky. It's a social media class, and so I introduced video games into the course. Shout out to Dr. Kishana Gray, who's teaching the class. I'm just, again, kind of supporting by adding an extra interactive element to it. But the class is about rhetoric and the history and the future of social media. As I'm sure my co-panelists would agree, and the rest of the United XP team, video games are the most engaging form of both consumer and social media. So adding video games is relevant to the class. My assignments that I give, I actually assign video games to the students to play, and then I have them write 2-paragraph reflection pieces, and then use those reflection pieces to do a 1 to 2 minute recording, and then ultimately post that content onto social media. You may see me even on LinkedIn engaging with a couple students who are doing that. I've had some resistance from some students who are not comfortable being on camera or recording their voices. So I told them to be growth hackers, right? I recommended an AI tool called Descript, and there's probably several others, that if you read into Descript, I think half an hour or an hour's worth of content of your voice, you can then type in copy into Descript, and it will recreate your voice for the words for the copy that you provided. So now students who were hesitant to do the assignment, or maybe using that as an excuse not to do the assignment, they can no longer have that opportunity while giving them more opportunity.
Bravo, Marcus, bravo. That's exactly what we like to see. Absolutely.
Alex had his hand. Go ahead, Alex.
What? Sibila first?
Oh, Sibila, can go, Sibila.
I'll go next.
Well, so one of the things that I wanted to mention is you could use AI to actually change the methods of delivery of the same content to match the different people who learn differently. So that brings the people who normally would have been singled out, the neurodivergent, those who are shy, who don't want to let out that they're not understanding something, or those who are having other things that makes them lost, be that because of logic or history or just missing context. Some people, some kids, they change schools, they go from one curriculum to another, from one country to another, and it's very important to be able to quickly adapt what and how they're learning, so they can fill in the gaps that other students are not having. And that is going to be very specific to individuals, and also it's going to be very specific to the teacher's emotional IQ, or their ability to be able to manage however many kids they have in a classroom. And historically, it's been very hard after a specific number of kids to keep track, and they also, in the higher education, they change grades and teachers too often. So in order to be able to keep the style of learning and the growth and all those other things, there isn't anything right now. The parents are busy in school, they're not educated into human development. There aren't necessarily humanitarian programs that teach teachers behavior science or human development from the perspective of all the different ages, different types, different cultures, different backgrounds, different personality types. So all those things, if a teacher had to pay attention to everything, then naturally there wouldn't be time to teach the actual academics. So the AI would be able to actually come up and analyze the type of learning and be able to switch to a better way that is more that is better for that particular student, essentially, and even out the field, and also be able to unlock potentials that normally would be.
All right. So I was actually going to bring in a little bit of an example that I've used on what Marcus has brought up. They use it to help promote video games in the classroom. On the back end side, the stuff that you guys don't usually see. So I've been in security for quite some time. I've done development work for quite some time. And the worst thing that we have to do is documentation and policy writing. God forbid if I ever have to do that again. Now, one of my buddies who actually is part of UKnightedXP, I'm not going to give any names, at his company had to write security policies in place. And I remember it was about 10:30 in the morning, and I was messaging him. I was like, "Hey, let's play a video game." Well, it's early. I don't have any meetings right now. And he goes, "Yeah, sure. I'm just having ChatGPT, as we all probably played with or heard about, write all of the security policies they need to have in place and handing over to legal." he would skim over what has been written and hand it over to the legal department. The legal team looked at it and goes, "This is the most genius thing. Have you been writing legal documentation for a while?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure." So it's actually in place as a policy for their security best practices for their security teams and for their legal and marketing teams on how to properly use their security measures in the company. It's in place, all written by an AI. So that's a bonus of what we can do and keeps us from having to spend, a multitude of time writing in legalese, because I can't stand doing that ever.
Dr. Leslie?
Well, I think that was a great example, and actually, I wanted to give an example of what Sibila was saying, because in Texas, it has had an amazing impact. So we have a Center for Brain Health. I won't say which university it's affiliated with, but they were asked to support a school district in particular a middle school cohort where the teachers, they were seeing a particular area that students were struggling in any particular grade level. And so the school district partnered with a university, and they used AI to teach teachers social cues to understand when students were engaged better and to understand when they perhaps were not as engaged as we would like. And as a result of the training of those teachers, they monitored 80,000 students over the course of 5 years. And the impact to those students in high school as a result of the teachers' training in middle school was phenomenal. And it's actually a case study now that is used to justify the use of AI in middle school to support teacher training and effective implementation at the secondary level. So Sibila, once again, thank you for bringing that example up. I had forgotten that, and I am so glad that you did, because that's impacted students' lives. So it's fabulous.
Panelists, thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time on your side. We're going to turn it over to the audience now for Q&A. Anybody from the panel?
I have questions.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So I have either a Alex question or a Dr. Leslie question. Who would like to go first?
Send it to Leslie first.
Okay. That's actually the harder question.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. So I was very curious about your answer earlier talking about ethics. And ethics can be a slippery slope into morality. So how do we safeguard the future to make sure that we are actually implementing ethics and not implementing morality?
Oh, that's a really good question. And so I have not thought on that particular slippery slope greatly, as really we've been back at the beginning trying to get kids to follow that acceptable use policy and focus on not plagiarizing, not violating copyright, not using it to attack their peers. So I haven't gone into the whole morality perspective yet. We're focused mainly on aligning the student behavior online with the acceptable use policy in our student code of conduct, right? And so in our code of conduct, we have certain acceptable social etiquette that we will use. I don't imagine that you would say that it would slip into morality. Things like, you don't swear online and things like that. I think these are acceptable, across the board and would not cross the boundary of morality. I think that if we align our digital citizenship to what we view as acceptable socially in terms of etiquette, in terms of human protections that are protected by law, I think then we may be able to avoid that slippery slope that you're talking about.
The reason I ask is I teach international students, and
yes,
it's interesting how many times where what we consider in America to be correct, but in reality it's morality, and it's not really ethical when you look at a global platform.
Right, the world.
Well, as as a practitioner of international law and as a person who specializes in international relations, I understand what you're saying. But I think when you consider what constructs culture and society, then we have to agree that the same would be an opposite if we were, for example, to go to another culture and perhaps look at or examine their acceptable use. There may be things, for example, that would not fly in American society that would fly in a communist society or something like that. And so I think your point is well taken, but I also think when we're talking about acceptable use in the United States, of course, we apply U.S. Codes of conduct, U.S. law, and U.S. culture. So, but it's a very interesting question that you ask, and I wonder, I would love to see some sort of analysis on a comparison, for example, a comparison law of what's done in these other countries and what they allow on their platforms versus what we allow on ours. I hear a lot about censorship, a lot about management of groupthink, and of course, if we believe what we see on Twitter, we have a little bit of that ourselves. So there's a lot of opportunity for debate here, and I'm so glad you raised that question.
Good, a couple more, and then we'll come back to you. Yeah, okay, good. So this is for primarily Dr. Leslie, but any of the panelists are welcome to answer. So both my parents spent 30 to 40 years in education, mostly public school, so they were there from the days of blackboard and overhead projectors through the unveiling of the internet. And what they saw through most of school administration was as technology improved, things that new educational tools would come out, and they'd be great tools, but administration would often use them as you must use, and the technology dictated how education was done in the classroom. So is there a fear, particularly in public school, where someone mentioned that AI was going to develop class syllabi or give cues for social interaction? Is there a fear of those, instead of becoming tools, that they instead become mandates from administration, and that AI will, by the mandates of the administration, dictate how the class is run?
Talk to me after.
Okay.
So are we answering that question, or we're just going to wait until later?
All eyes are on you.
I think that, okay, all eyes are I think that's a really good point. And I was looking at some information by the World Economic Forum just recently, and they project that by 2027, I think that AI is going to be a $20 billion industry. And a lot of that is going to be driven by employers, right? And so what employers are doing is pushing education to use these tools so that when those students graduate, they will be successful in the work environment. And so as educators, our goal is to certainly foster lifelong learning and curiosity. It's also a form of preparation to go on to college, preparation for that post-secondary career. We see this debate, especially in high school, and even in elementary school, right? Do they learn cursive writing? Should they not? Is that a waste of time? Who is signing? We're e-signing. No one's signing, so we have these debates right now about whether we should push that down. But I will tell you, I sat on a cybersecurity task force for a university just recently, and I was talking to the person in charge of Hewlett Packard's just global business, and he was saying that at this point they have such a need for data science and data analytics, even with all these layoffs, that they're really hoping that schools will use all of the tools that are provided out there, and especially when it comes to AI and machine learning, because then those students will be able to transfer seamlessly into the workforce. So you can get into that argument of the ultimate purpose for education. Is it that liberal arts maverick building person that we want to see, that rugged individual who can go off and create business and industry? Or do we want a combination of perhaps that person and the person who can get that certification and go off into their business? I will tell you, just watching as an educator and an administrator, how education has changed just within the past, let's call it 6 years. 6 to 8 years ago, if you were a surveyor, you were going to take a 4-year course. Your pathway would include working with probably a team of 6 people. You would go out into the field and you would have people holding chains, and there would be about a crew of 6 people. Then maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they started using computers, and now maybe you don't need the 6 people. Now you need maybe, a handful of people. Nowadays, that program is a certification program. You're going to go out with a drone and a computer, and you might have one other person with you. It's changed that quickly. So you have a lot of pressures, of course, on colleges, right, and universities. They want to be relevant. They want students to be successful. We're required to track that when students matriculate, right? And so there is a lot of debate right now. And isn't this an exciting time to be on the cutting edge of this and see these students have all of these opportunities? It's amazing to be able to have the privilege of these discussions. I'm excited for everyone.
I do wonder if 100 years ago, 50 years ago, there were discussions about should we let them use computers in school? Should we let them learn science in school? Should we let them learn about factories and all those things? We have had automation and we have had technology spurs throughout history, and that conversation probably has come up more than once. And every time we have adapted and we have become better, so it's worth trying.
Yeah, I agree. So we got a couple other questions real quick.
Just as a general note, it was great earlier when it was dark, but I think it's now the point we'll probably need light.
Too dark.
So
My goodness.
I've heard the latest generation of AI described as spicy autocomplete, and I think that's not necessarily right. And somebody else
I love
it.
We're going to, that's fantastic.
But here's my question, as simple as I can make it. Incidentally, yes, they were worried about the chalkboard 120 years ago, so it happens over and over and over again.
Right.
The information that these AIs are trained on, you can filter for competence so that it's always going to give a competent answer, but it can't really create by itself. It's assembling from a corpus of knowledge, which means that it's going to tend towards the average, which in a legal document is probably fine because a lot of it's boilerplate. If you're writing an essay to get a C, that's also probably fine. But better necessarily implies different. And so my question isn't, should we use it at all? My question is, if we take away the drudgery and the automation of things like, do we know which questions students are failing on and can we add more of that curriculum? How do you think we're ultimately going to decide where we draw the line, what humans should always kind of be part of, where the human creativity needs to be, and where we can just sort of offload our thinking to the AI? What techniques do you think we're going to develop to be able to identify where that line is?
Sibila, I think this is a perfect question for you, actually.
Yep.
You're an architect.
Yeah, so let me just put it this way. If you don't think about AI as a technology, and let's say it's just a human, and just it's person named Al, and you don't know Al, you just met him, he came to your office, he asked for a job, and you ask him to do something, a report or code or a game, you're not going to trust Al to just do whatever. You're going to make sure that he's trained on the technology that you want him to be trained on, and that he knows the topics that you need to know for your business solution, and that he has an authority when he speaks, that he's not making some BS just because he wants to please you. Those machines, they are there to please you. The algorithms are there to provide you with something, and sometimes it's generative, sometimes it's other things. It's not always generative, but sometimes you could definitely see that there are certain things that are being made up, but it's not because the AI is lying. And I can give you a perfect example. From my country, from Bulgaria, somebody had asked in English what is a book that was written about the Ottoman invasion of Bulgaria, which was 500 years long. They could ask what the Iguto, which is under invasion, basically translated by this author, what it's about. And the AI had answered with some, that it's a fictional story from the future about times that have never existed and sci-fi, etc. And of course, none of it was true, but the AI didn't just come up with the story that decided to butcher a very historic book in a whole nation and a very very difficult time that was part of the history. The AI, what it did was it generated text based on the number of essays that the people have published from the final exams of Bulgaria, where students who really did poorly to the point that they made the students they deserve time, and they've been published before in newspapers, and now they're published online. It's fun, it's hysterical, but to the AI, it doesn't know. It's coming from an official source, the education ministry, or to teachers or schools, and people are laughing. They're sending them around. It's pop culture. It's funny, but it does not understand that. But even though it understands the humor part, it doesn't understand the history that has happened offline 10, so 20, 30, 40 years ago in that country. And this is the part that we need to be aware of. We're not very good at representing ourselves to other people or to talking to other people. Like there's miscommunication problems all the time with spouses because we expect people to apply the same context and the same history and the same viewpoint and the same analysis that we have done to reach the question or the topic that we are doing. But usually the person across has completely different concept of thought process. And even if you align, it takes a little bit of communication to get there. And the same is with AI as well, because at the end, you are essentially interacting with algorithm, and humans also are very algorithmic creatures. We process everything in our daily lives through algorithmic activities. So we tend to hide our secret things because we don't fully understand them ourselves, what happens in our brains and in our memory and in our reasoning. And we expect the same type of patterns from a machine, which is not going to happen. And it doesn't happen even with other humans, which is the thing that we need to realize. And if you don't know how to communicate with the human, you wouldn't be successful at doing anything. The same is truthful for prompt writing and communicating with technology as well. And the last part that I would want to say as well is the data that we leave behind is what is just, it's one small part of bias that is being introduced to the models. It's the bias is often introduced by the person interacting with the model, how the question is asked, what they are asked about it, because they're trying to probe and to play kind of like an investigator or kind of like a behavior scientist with the AI. And that's not a better thing, because we understand better and we learn better that way ourselves. We understand where the limits of the conversation. So often when you don't get the example that you are hoping for, change one or two words and see how the answer changes to realize where you're introducing the bias. But also bias could be introduced by society when a full group of people decides that they're not going to talk about pink elephants, and that and another group of people says there's only pink elephants and there aren't any other pink elephants, and AI would think that that's a fact because that's a consensus in society. And even it doesn't matter what it is, it can be scientific, pop culture, etc. A lot of things that are starting in society as a pop culture or as a fad, they turn into technology or sciences or into religions or into other things. And essentially, it is important to verify everything that you get from anybody. It doesn't matter if it's a AI or human, because your goal as a human being is to just verify and deduct and build your own conclusions, how you understand what is happening around you.
Did I answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions before we close the call? All right. Well, thank you, panelists. Thank you guys for coming tonight. And we appreciate your time. If you have any more questions afterwards, you're welcome to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.